we practically have like no debt, man. Like even all the machinery, everything that we own, all the raw material, like we bought it with just profits. A lot of people, like especially in e-commerce, they think the only way to make money is like the profits that they earn. But really, if you build a valuable business, that business has a value to it, right? And so whatever your brand is, maybe it's worth 100,000, maybe it's 500 or a few million. And the thing is, you don't have to exit the whole thing. You can sell 20% of it to someone that believes in you, that thinks you're going to continue growing and scaling. And you can structure it in a way where you take some of that money off the table and you keep some of that money in to reinvest it. It would make sense to kind of break down how the company is structured, right?
Sure.
So we're A3 Ventures, which is like the holdco up top. We have two main arms to the business. One is home decor fulfillment, which is like the manufacturing company, fully separated business. And then we have A3 Brands, which is like all of our e-commerce brands. And they're like structured within a single corporation. And so we have like this amazing e-commerce team at the helm of A3 Brands. That team consists of a retention team, so email and SMS. We have a head of growth that manages mainly paid acquisition, right? Meta, TikTok, etc., but also leads the retention team. We have a creative team as well that is like only making performance ad content all the time. And so it's almost like an internal marketing agency that services our, portfolio of brands. And so they'll try to allocate time accordingly, like, 25% to this brand, 25% to this brand, or maybe they'll skew that time input depending on seasonality and whichever brand requires it. But that's how we structured like the e-commerce team. And so and I'll say this because as of last year, we pretty much had 16 people in that e-commerce team. Moving into this year, I mean, I think we like slowed down a bit. There was a lot of overhead that we had. We reevaluated. And so we actually cut that team in half. And now it's just 8 of like stone cold killers.
Yeah.
Right. And they're amazing at what they do and they get like the job done. On the manufacturing side, again, it really varies because it depends on the time of the year, the seasonality. Right now, when it's slow, we probably have 40 full-time employees. But November, December, there's going to be like 100 people plus a day working. Double shifts, like open from, 7 a.m. to pretty much 11, 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. at night.
Wow. Well, that's impressive. And also, I'm just really curious about this, how you found this like business structure. Was it just naturally how do you go from drop shipping to having a holding company with a manufacturing side?
No doubt, man.
Like, how did you find this business model?
In all honesty, bro, like it was a series of like constantly challenging ourselves, right? Like, dude, like if I told you what I knew about business when we started, next to nothing, like peanuts. People would ask me what I do, and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'm a marketer," But like we were a business, we were so much more than that. So my framework for thinking about business really changed because I was a college dropout. And I decided to go back. And so I was like, I'm going to go back, finish undergrad. I finished undergrad while we were building all this.
Oh, cool.
And then my wife actually convinced me to get my MBA. And I'm really lucky because I live very close to like one of the best schools in the Southeast, Rollins, Crummer. And so I went there to get my MBA and I was surrounded by like VCs, people in private equity, people that are like thinking super high level about business, M&A, acquiring, selling businesses, things like that. And so as I like connected with these people and I would see how like these, Fortune 500s would run and these other companies that they're going to work for, it made me realize that like we have to level up. So around 2020 is when I did the restructure and it was perfect timing because that's when COVID happened and e-commerce just scaled, right?
Right.
So I think up till 2020, we were only doing like 3 to 4 million a year in revenue. And since then we've like 5x, I guess. And so it was the perfect timing to have those learnings, implement them, restructure the company, and then do it while we were growing. So that's kind of, I want to say like for me, school isn't meant for everyone, but for me, it actually genuinely helped, man. The network, the people.
That's a really well, actually, I wouldn't say uncommon, but there's just very popular to be like, fuck school, like, this is stupid, like, blah, 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 it's a waste of time. And like, there's some truth to that. But in your case,
there is.
It actually helped you so much meeting these types of people. It's funny because I feel like in the last year for me I've been in kind of where you were back then in terms of like restructuring or at least thinking bigger and learning about venture and learning about, like you said, like mergers and
Right.
acquisitions and investors. And I've been learning a lot about that world as well. And that's why when you mention all this, I'm like, oh man, this like piques my interest a lot right now because it's relevant. Have you ever brought on investors, or are you thinking about that stuff or not?
Yeah, so like we're bootstrapped. And so we've always like self-funded via, retained earnings, profits, like reinvesting back into the business. We practically have like no debt, man. Like even all the machinery, everything that we own, all the raw material, like we bought it with just profits.
Crazy.
Um, and so like we're in a position where it's like, man, we've been building this for a long time. And so when you get to that position, you start thinking about, okay, like it would be nice to relinquish some of this stress, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
work so hard to build this enterprise value. Does it really matter if I were to sell 20% and take some money off the table?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people, like, especially in e-commerce, you know, they think the only way to make money is like the profits that they earn. But really, if you build a valuable business, that business has a value to it, right? And so whatever your brand is, maybe it's worth 100,000, maybe it's 500 or a few million. And the thing is, you don't have to exit the whole thing. You can sell 20% of it to someone that believes in you, that thinks you're going to continue growing and scaling. And you can structure it in a way where you take some of that money off the table and you keep some of that money in to reinvest it. And so, like, going back into like, what you're asking, like, yeah, I've definitely thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think it's the right time for us, given how the market has shifted, the cost of capital, interest rates are super high. I don't think that people are willing to invest at the valuations that they were willing to do a year ago, 2 years ago. So for
So
me, and I
true.
think this goes for anyone that has a strong business, you should wait. Wait a year, 2 years, unless of course timing is of the essence. If you're in an industry that you have to gain market share, then you should go get that money no matter what it costs. But if you think your industry is here to stay, you're not in a rush, you can wait to get that investment.